So The Last of Us Season 2 is almost here, which up to this point has arguably been one of the greatest video game adaptations of all time. And since Season 2 is about to drop, I figured why not go back and rank every episode in Season 1. Alright, so of course, the first season of The Last of Us is based on the 2013 game, The Last of Us, and just overall in Season 1, they averaged about 32 million viewers per episode in Season 1, and also was HBO's most watched debut season of all time. And really, right off the bat, I know for me personally, I have always been a huge sucker for anything apocalyptic, zombie games, zombie movies, just anything that takes place in this type of a setting, this type of a subgenre, I have always loved. Now, you might be asking, Matt, have you played the game? And yes, love me some apocalyptic survival games. Anytime a game comes out in that genre and looks somewhat decent, I boot it up and I try it. I love games like Days Gone and of course The Last of Us. Now yes, there's a lot of things in Season 1 that are taken directly from the game, but there's also a lot of great moments in Season 1 that they came up with pretty much completely on their own, which of course we'll talk more about as this video goes along. I love though how much the show takes the greatness from the game and uses that. The show, it doesn't feel like the show is in this competition with the game to try to prove who's better, which one is going to be a better version of this story. No, it embraces the masterpiece that game is, but it also does what an adaptation should do. It expands upon the stuff that it should expand upon, but then it also adds some new things as well. And now before I get into the ranking, I want to quickly talk about the cast in Season 1 of The Last of Us, and specifically we're going to talk about Joel and Ellie. And so, I mean, right off the bat, Pedro Pascal as Joel. I mean, I remember the first time I saw Pedro was in Game of Thrones, and then after seeing him in a show like The Mandalorian, I just knew, man, this guy, I just knew why he was so perfect for this role in particular. He just plays that guy, that hardened, kind of broken loner, get shit done kind of a guy so well in this show. And there's so many things that we could talk about with Joel's character, but specifically in Season 1, I just love how Joel's character goes from this dad to this guy who, you know, is a pretty bad person at times, of course, back to being this dad again, but he's also broken at the same time. And yeah, once again, I mean, Pedro just does such an incredible job in this role as Joel. And then of course, Bella Ramsey as Ellie, who I also saw for the very first time in Game of Thrones, playing Lyanna Mormont in Game of Thrones, but just one of those characters in Game of Thrones who like had such a small role in comparison to some of the other characters in that show, but just immediately popped off the screen. I feel like everybody saw that. Her character just kind of blew up right away, and it's easy to see why everyone loved that character. She was just like this kind of little unassuming girl, though, who was just clearly this badass leader. But yeah, Bella Ramsey, she is just so good as Ellie in the show. And what's weird about it is I know it's one of those instances that kind of doesn't make much sense, but when I think about the casting of Joel and Ellie in this show, it just feels so perfect. I can't imagine anyone else playing those characters other than Bella Ramsey and Pedro Pascal. There's just something about it. Now I know if they would have casted maybe somebody else in those roles who's also great as just an actor, just in general, maybe I'd be thinking the same thing, but honestly, I just cannot think of a better casting for these two characters than those two actors, and they just do an incredible job. All right, now it is time to get to the ranking. Now, keep in mind, as I go through this list, there is not a single bad episode in all of Season 1, in my opinion. I think, obviously, there are episodes that I think are a little bit better than some of the others, but I think every episode serves its purpose and does some key things in that episode. And yeah, it just really shows like how great this show is, because like I said, every single episode is really damn good. But anyways, all right, how the hell do I rank Season 1 of The Last of Us? Well, coming in last place at number 9 is going to be episode 6, called Kin. And immediately with this episode, I love how it really does feel like this is the second half of the season right away. It's kind of like, you know, all that city stuff that happened in the previous episodes, you know, that's behind us, at least for now. And I love how this episode right away, it's just like we're immediately thrown into the snow, you know, letting you know that this is going to be kind of an entire new journey from here on out. A lot of that stuff that happened before we're just not even going to revisit a lot of that stuff. And, now they are on this new journey. They finally made it to Wyoming. I also love immediately that couple that we stumble upon that we get to meet right in the beginning of this episode. I think they're great. They're kind of bickering between each other. The husband's like, "Did you lie to them?" And she's like, "No, I didn't." He's like, "You made them soup? What are you doing?" It's just like a fun little interaction and shows you some of those fun side characters that are in this show, and also shows you, even just like in today's society or in this like very unforgiving world that they're in, like all that drama and stuff going on in the city, there are still people like way out in the cut who are just kind of, minding their own business, just living their life. And then, of course, in this episode, a really big moment when Joel finally reunites with Tommy after all this time. They hug each other. It's obviously an emotional moment. Tommy is at this big settlement up in Jackson Hole, and before that, there's some fun tension there when the dog is, approaching Ellie to sniff her to see if she's infected. Like, that's a pretty tense moment. I thought that was pulled off really well. But overall, just with this settlement that Tommy now lives in, I mean, come on, great set design with this entire thing. It's really, really top notch. I also thought that moment in the episode was pretty funny when Joel is like, "Wait, so this is basically communism, right?" And Tommy, who's a veteran from Texas, is like, "Wait, no, this isn't communism. What are you talking about?" And they're just like, "This is literally a commune. Like, what are you talking about?" And then you can just see him thinking in his head, like, "Damn, man, the old me would have been really pissed at myself right now." But now at this point, he's just kind of like, "Hey, we got a movie theater and we've got a bar. I mean, maybe this is kind of nice." But yeah, this episode does leave on a pretty solid cliffhanger that makes me want to immediately watch the next episode. I mean, they finally make it to the university. None of the Fireflies are there. They eventually get ambushed. Joel ends up getting shanked in the whole scuffle. And the episode ends with Joel falling off the horse because he's losing so much blood. And you have this moment where Ellie's just like, "Man, I can't do this without you. I don't think I can survive. That's not going to happen." It's just really one of those moments that makes you want to see how the hell Ellie is going to get out of this really tough situation. And really, though, in the end, episode 6 overall is a really fun episode. It has a lot of moments that I do really enjoy, but it doesn't really stack up to some of those great episodes in this season, in my opinion. But really, I mean, not every episode can kind of be like a premiere or like a finale type of an episode. I get that. So even though, it doesn't really have those massive peaks like some of the other episodes in this season has, it still has a lot of great things in it, like I said, and it definitely pushes the story forward. All right, coming up next at number 8 is going to be the next episode, which is episode 7, called Left Behind. Now, like I mentioned a second ago, there's a lot riding on the line with this episode. Big cliffhanger at the end of episode 6. And, at this point, I mean, Joel is almost dead. So as a viewer, it's like, damn, what is going to happen? Obviously, like I said, he got shanked during that ambush. They're out, I think they're still in Colorado at this point. They're basically out in the middle of nowhere, trying to head further west. So really, to open up this episode, it's just kind of like, okay, what is going to happen here? And even though Joel is basically on the brink of death, episode 7 is very much Ellie's episode. We've heard her kind of hint at some of the things in her past. She's talked about that friend that she had. She, obviously we know that she got bit at some point. So what happened with that? How did she originally get bit and realize that she's immune? In this episode, we also get to see some of those little glimpses to her time in Fedra Military School as well, which, yeah, as you could have guessed, she was basically that kid with a lot of potential who, got into a lot of trouble along the way. And not only is Ellie an orphan, which we found out earlier in the season, but we also see in this episode the girl, her best friend, the girl that she likes, ends up joining the Fireflies, even though they were both in Fedra Military School together. So that just throws her for a whirlwind. She doesn't know what to think. She kind of feels betrayed, confused, all sorts of things. But on top of that, she also breaks to her that she's leaving tonight to go to Atlanta because the Fireflies are basically stationing her in Atlanta. So this even further explains, why Ellie is the way that she is, because she once again feels like everybody she gets close to just ends up leaving her. And yeah, once again, and I'm probably going to say this a lot during season 1, but the set design with this entire mall sequence, man, it is so damn good. And really just another heartbreaking episode in this season. Riley finally decides to stay. Ellie kind of convinces her. Ellie then like takes the risk and goes in for the kiss. And I mean, The Last of Us gonna Last of Us, just ruining another one of those happy endings. But I love this idea in this episode to intertwine that story with Riley along with the story that's happening in the present moment with Joel. You know, the last person that she loves, the last person that she cares about on this earth. And it just shows you why she's fighting so hard and she's not going to give up on Joel, especially after showing what happened to her previously with everything that went down with Riley. And yeah, I'll say this a lot, of course, but it's another great episode in the season, in my opinion. But it's kind of one of those bridge episodes. It's building the backstory of course, Ellie a little bit more, but it doesn't really have those all-time memorable moments as much as some of the other episodes, which will obviously be a little higher on this list. It oddly doesn't really push the story forward for the current stuff that we're seeing starting to happen. It just kind of looks into the past to show us why Ellie is the way that she is and explains some of the stories that she's kind of been hinting at in earlier episodes in the season. Just kind of the why and what really happened. But like I said, another really fun, solid episode. Okay, up next at number 7 is going to be episode 2, Infected. And episode 2 is very different than episode 1 in a lot of different ways. Obviously, episode 1, just the kickoff episode for this season, was a crazy episode with so many things happening. Whereas in the first half of episode 2, it's definitely much slower. Not necessarily in a bad way, it's all great stuff, but it's a little bit more like the sneaky journey, trying to get Ellie from point A to point B, you know, getting to know the characters a little bit, seeing their personality work together a little bit. And also, especially in the first half of this episode, really the whole episode just in general, it's also still like very much, you know, the exact details of the game, but adapted to a TV show. But one moment I definitely love in episode 2, and I think they pulled off really, really well, is the whole flashback scene taking us to Indonesia in 2003, just to really help portray kind of the scale of this entire outbreak, really make it feel like a global event in a lot of different ways. And this is something that you can do with the show that you can't always do in a movie setting unless you have trilogies, you know, sequels and all that kind of stuff. Because, you know, take a movie like I Am Legend, for example. Of course, we see kind of the outbreak. We see what happens in that movie in the city, but we don't really have a chance it feels very isolated because we don't really have that chance to see what happened in other places in the world. So it kind of makes you think, okay, how bad was it really in some of these other cities in the world, some of these other countries? How did they handle it? Maybe they handled it way better than us in the United States, but I don't know because we never got to see it. Whereas here in this episode, we do get to see it. We do get to see how this other country tried to fix this whole thing. And in this moment, it also just further emphasizes what they are up against, how crazy this entire outbreak was, as we're following this woman who has studied cordyceps and just stuff in this particular field of science, basically her whole life researching stuff like this. And through her expertise throughout all those years, after looking at what they're up against right now, she looks at them dead in the eye and basically says, honestly, a vaccine is impossible. So they look at her and they're like, okay, so what do we need to do? And then she just says, bomb. You know, all they can do is really just bomb the city. And really what's interesting about that point is nothing has happened in the city that's chaotic. You know, they really haven't seen anything all that bad happen from their perspective. Obviously, we know that some of the people who were bit or some of the people who were infected are still out on the loose. But she knows, regardless of no chaos happening, she knows. Yeah, she just wants to be with her family, and this is pretty much the end. Not only just the acting in that entire scene is incredible, but yeah, just really brings everything together with this whole outbreak. Another moment that I do really enjoy in this episode too is we follow Ellie. This is her first time ever being outside of the Fedra gates, especially during the daytime. And it's also ours as well in this new world outside of the gates after the outbreak, after all of these years. And me personally, I just eat this stuff up. And I know a lot of this is green screen work and things like that, but regardless, it looks incredible. And just like in the game, I just want to wander around just looking at all the detail. Plus, personally, I don't know what it is, but I've just always been fascinated by abandoned things, like old malls, old houses that are just like these time capsules. It's really like the only way we can step our foot inside of a time machine is by going back and looking at some of these abandoned buildings that haven't been touched really over all the years. I don't know. There's just something about it that I love. And then also in this episode, we get to see really the clickers, how they work, how they look, how they operate, how you can kind of navigate around them, try to sneak by them. And yeah, spoiler, it's not easy. And then of course, at the end of this episode, that moment at the Capitol, finding out that Tess is infected. Another brutal moment in Joel's life, helping to further build who his character is, more heartbreak for him. You know, the person that he's had this romantic relationship for, it seems like many, many years in this new world, the one person he can feel like he can trust is also gonna die. And then we get to see, you know, the whole like Tess cordyceps makeout session, which I think is like creepy and gross in the right way. But yeah, just a moment with so many different ups and downs. And yeah, overall, a solid episode, an episode that has a lot of fun moments. Like I mentioned earlier, an episode very similar to the game in a lot of different ways. Doesn't have those peaks like some of the great episodes in this season, of course, but overall, a great episode nonetheless. All right, up next to number 6 is going to be episode 4, Please Hold to My Hand. Now, we get to start the road trip in this episode right off the bat. You know, now that they have Bill's truck, they can really start to make some momentum in this episode towards Tommy. And to me, I just love that part so much. Like I mentioned earlier, like my fascination with abandoned things, especially in this kind of apocalyptic world. I just love it. I mean, they're driving past abandoned theme parks, you know, abandoned military zones, just different towns and stuff. And I love it. And to me, I feel like, damn, I wish these characters didn't have some place that they really needed to get to as soon as possible, because I really would love to see them explore some of these things. Like just walking around an abandoned theme park or something like that would have been cool as hell. And just visually, I think in this episode, they do a really great job showing off some of that stuff and just what has happened throughout America as they're on this road trip. And now, of course, this is the ambush episode in Kansas City. Now, I don't really know what they were thinking about driving through a city in this type of a world. I don't know. That just seems like a terrible idea. Not only are you making quite a bit of noise, but there's going to be people there, and there's definitely going to be some bad people there as well. But regardless, we definitely get some fun action in that whole sequence. But in this episode, this is a really, really important episode for Joel and Ellie's character, because not only does Ellie save his life when she has the gun that he doesn't know about, but you can see Joel starting to crack a little bit. He's starting to trust her. He's starting to not just see her as cargo in this episode. You know, his character, his wall, his facade kind of cracks a little bit when Ellie tells him the diarrhea pun. You know, he starts to laugh about that, and you can start to see their relationship starting to change just a little bit. And of course, as Joel and Ellie travel along in this journey, they're without a doubt going to introduce some new characters and some new groups that they're going to have to navigate around or ride on through. And one of them in particular, a group of survivors that they call the Resistance, added to the mix, very similar to some of the things that they did in The Walking Dead, of course, but it just adds kind of an extra layer of danger, you know, while they're in this particular area. And then, yeah, this episode ends with those glass shards that Joel put down to make sure nobody ambushed them, clearly not working, as, you know, they're held at gunpoint by Henry and Sam as we get to meet them for the very first time. And this episode overall has some very important things pushing the story forward. Obviously, they've made quite a bit of progress towards getting closer to Tommy and stuff like that. Doesn't have any of those like mind-blowing moments or anything like that. Love the landscape and just seeing America in this new world and everything happening. A very fun episode. But yeah, it doesn't have some of those great moments like some of the episodes we'll talk about in a second. Okay, now moving into the top 5. Up next is episode 8, called When We Are in Need. And kind of like I just talked about a second ago in episode 4, as this journey continues, as they go into new states and new cities, you're gonna meet new groups along the way. Some of them good, some of them bad. This group though, well, I guess depends on your diet. If cannibalism maybe is something that makes you a little bit hungry, then you'll probably watch this episode a little bit differently than I will. And well, yeah, now that the Resistance group in Kansas City was pretty much wiped off the face of this planet. We're now following this new group, which, most of us would probably label as a fanatic cult. I mean, the ground's too cold to dig. You'll bury that girl's dad in the summer? Come on now. Yeah, my ass, you're gonna eat that dude's big toe like it's one of those little smokies we like to eat while watching the Super Bowl. But Matt, they're starving to death in the winter. What do you want them to do for food? Come on, guys. Didn't we just see like 200 buffalo a couple episodes back? I'm pretty sure they just couldn't hunt for shit in the summer, so now they're kind of reaping the repercussions for that. I mean, come on. It's their own fault. And in this episode, this is one of those perfect examples of how I love how this show likes to pay homage to the video game. The reason why this show even got made just in general, and what a great way to pay homage to the video game by bringing back the voice of Joel by casting the legend Troy Baker to play one of the key members of this cult in this episode. And also, like, not only just that, like, what an epic way to take that character back. I mean, the girl you were protecting in the game is now gonna kill you in real life by just putting that cleaver right into his neck. And at the end of the episode, when Ellie kills that cult leader, I couldn't help but think, man, maybe a missed opportunity there. I mean, I kind of wish they would have given us at least 2 episodes with that cult leader. Maybe not reveal that he's pretty evil until the 2nd episode. I just feel like some of these shows, I mean, the villains are so important, and it elevates a show when you just really hate the villain. Now, I don't hate the way that they went about killing this guy. Very similar to the game, and just how it all went down is great. But I do think it was a little bit of a missed opportunity. If they would have kept this guy around a little bit longer, I think that would have been really cool. Now, I'm not talking like Negan in The Walking Dead, where it's like, all right, guys, here you go. Here's the 100th episode of Negan narrowly escaping death. No, I'm not talking like that, but maybe just like one more episode to hate this guy just a little bit more. Nonetheless, though, one of the most satisfying kills in this entire season, just as Ellie is going absolutely ham on this guy, kind of reminded me of Tommy Jarvis at the end of Friday the 13th, Part 4, the final chapter, when Tommy was also doing something very similar. But especially, she's just kind of letting out all those emotions, especially because she thinks that Joel also might be dead. And then, man, what a moment when Joel shows up. Definitely outside of episode 1, one of the most glaring examples of Joel, like, once again being a dad. But a really fun episode with some twists and turns, finding out that this group's been eating humans. Great revenge moments at the end, like I just talked about, some intense scenes in this episode as well. And I also love the creative choice in this episode to make it seem like, all right, Joel is eventually going to show up and he's going to save the day, right? Nope, not going that route. Ellie is going to have to, get through this on her own. All right, up next at number 4 is going to be episode 9, Look for the Light, the season 1 finale. And wow, what an opening to this episode. I mean, first of all, what an origin story to just a character in this world. I mean, your mom's this badass. She kills the clicker while she's super pregnant. She gives birth to you, while all of that's going down, and also gets bit in the process. Not only does this moment show us how Ellie became an orphan and also how Ellie became immune, but also shows us the origin to her history with Marlene. And like I mentioned earlier, I mean, what a cool moment having Troy Baker back playing a character in season 1 of the TV show. But also here, I mean, seeing Ashley Johnson back, the woman who voiced Ellie in the video game, now playing Ellie's mom. I mean, what a cool moment, really. This episode also gets bonus points because a lot of this episode takes place in the city, Salt Lake, where I was born and also where I went to college. So to me, just seeing how realistic of a version of this city in this apocalyptic world and how good of a job they did of creating this environment in a city that I know really well is really cool. And to me personally, just adds more immersion to this episode, makes me kind of picture what I would do if all of a sudden this city that I used to live in became like this. And because I was born downtown, I'm just going to pretend that the hospital that Joel saved Ellie in is the same hospital that I was born in. All right? Don't worry about it. I'm just gonna pretend that that's where it happened. All right, makes me feel cool. And then of course in this episode, as the onion of Joel is starting to get peeled further and further back, he's starting to, talk more about his history just as a person and his backstory with Ellie and opening up more. We get that line, "So time heals all wounds, I guess." And then Joel looks at Ellie and said, "It wasn't time that did it." Such a big just line in this show in particular. A huge moment, very emotional moment. And then, we get that moment where Joel hears about Ellie's brain surgery. And he's definitely getting that vibe of Ellie's going to be sacrificed for the betterment of mankind. And it's one of those things we can all debate till the end of time which decision is the right or wrong decision. There's going to be lots of people on both sides of it. And, we can understand that. But this is a moment where Joel just goes full on John Rambo. And there's a lot of things that are very unrealistic. Joel taking on this whole squad of dudes with assault rifles, but it's a great moment regardless. And also it encapsulates kind of Joel as a person in this world, his blend of just being this ruthless guy that will do anything he needs to do, especially when it's for somebody that he cares about, and just his determination to never feel what he felt in episode 1 of this season when his daughter passed away. Not very many people get a second chance at, being a father or being a father figure, especially in this type of a world, in this type of a setting. And Joel is definitely feeling like he is getting that second chance, and also a chance to really kind of heal. Never forget, those wounds will never go away, but heal a little bit. And also, like I said, just getting that second chance. And he's going to do anything to protect that. And the season ends with Joel and Ellie eventually approaching Tommy's compound that he lives at up in Jackson Hole again. Obviously, the snow is mostly melted at this point. Some really cool shots there, but Joel just lying through his teeth, telling Ellie once again that, they found multiple people that were immune as well, and they've pretty much given up on a cure, which is a big moment. It's one of those moments, I'm a parent, I've got 2 kids, and it's one of those moments where you're trying to, Joel's obviously looking at Ellie as, his daughter in a way, and he's trying to protect her by lying to her, whether right or wrong. It's one of those moments also where they are really, really building that trust together. They really trust each other, and Joel is definitely jeopardizing that. And I'm sure in season 2, they're going to explore that. And I know deep down inside, I'm sure Ellie knows that there's a big part of her that really believes that he is lying there, but she doesn't want to believe it at the same time, just that inner conflict. But an important moment that I know will be revisited in season 2. But the season finale, a great episode, some very intense moments, some moments where Ellie and Joel's characters are, becoming closer than ever. Their dynamic together changing so much, more so than it has, in earlier episodes when maybe we didn't think it could change even more. It has. They've become even more close, but really, great episode. Just a lot of fun. All right, everybody, moving into the top 3. Up next at number 3 is going to be episode 5, Endure and Survive. So the last episode, episode 4, was a little bit of an emotional break, but not so much here. This is the journey with Henry and Sam. And I think in this episode, it was a cool idea to kind of replay what happened in episode 4, but it's from Henry and Sam's POV, essentially showing them that they can, at least probably kind of trust Joel and Ellie. They're maybe sort of on the same side. Well, at least they know that all 4 of them are probably the most wanted people by the resistance. And so, they're using Joel as essentially like the muscle. Henry and Sam are helping them to navigate, to get outside of the city, because they know the city so well. And they do eventually get outside of the city at nighttime. They're in this neighborhood, but unfortunately, there just happens to be that one sniper there kind of ruining their plans to get outside of the city just for good, to get it behind them right before some craziness happens. And holy shit, does it happen. And after Joel goes up into the tower, he kills that old guy who's sniping everybody, and then the rest of the group is pinned down behind the car. The resistance has showed up. It's one of those great moments where you're like, I'm kind of calculating all the potential scenarios of how they could get out of this situation, and I'm pretty much out of ideas. I don't know how they're going to get out of this situation, but then it ties back that really small moment earlier in the episode where it quickly showed, the infected that were pushed underground, kind of pushing their way outside of the ground. Ties that all back around when the truck falls into this giant sinkhole, just unleashing all of these clickers on everybody. And just as those clickers and that bloater are coming out of that sinkhole, I mean, this is the biggest action moment of the entire season, right next to those moments in season 1. And overall, just that whole sequence, I think, is really intense and pulled off so damn well. I also like that moment how the leader of the resistance gets killed by that kid clicker, right after she gave that whole speech about how kids' lives are not any more valuable than anyone else's lives. I just thought that was like a nice little touch in the episode. And this ending to this episode, this is a rough ending. One of the roughest endings in this entire season. I mean, they basically made it out of this situation that seemed like it was impossible. They're now in this motel thing. They're kind of like relieved and just hanging out, resting before they continue their journey. But we know this is The Last of Us, so we know that is not the end of this story for all 4 of them. And just more heartbreak for Ellie and everyone else. I mean, Ellie was like really bonding with this kid, obviously. They were really becoming close friends. Ellie doesn't have anybody that's really even close to her age on this journey that she can kind of relate to. And then Henry has to shoot his own brother without even a second to really process what is even happening here. And then on top of that, amidst all the chaos and the craziness, turns the gun on himself. Now, yeah, the first half of this episode is a little bit slow. It's enjoyable, it's important, and it builds the story for these characters to make the end more impactful. But I mean, the second half of this episode, it kind of has everything. It has surprises, great action. It's got some gory moments. It's got some moments where you're feeling like, these characters are going to finally get a W here. And then, of course, one of the saddest moments in this entire season at the end of that episode. All right, everybody, up next at number 2 is going to be episode 1, When You're Lost in the Darkness, the longest episode of the season at 1 hour and 21 minutes. Basically like a short-ish movie, packed full of just everything, setting the foundation for the rest of this show. And this episode starts way back in 1968. You've got these scientists being interviewed, arguing about kind of fungi, the threat, whether it's a big threat, whether it's not a big threat, kind of giving us a little glimpse into the scientific world and how they viewed this stuff just over the years. And then we transport to 2003 in Austin, Texas, of course, with Joel and his family. And just like the video game, I feel like they do such a great job building towards, what is just about to happen and just the pure chaos that's about to start for all of these characters. And in this episode, I just feel like they do such a great job introducing us to the characters, introducing us to the different personalities, Joel's kind of relationship with his brother Tommy, how he has to look after him, and Tommy, makes some mistakes along the way. Also, Joel's daughter and all of that. And also introduces us to, the beginning of Joel's kind of kill or be killed mentality, even very early on in this chaos, before he's had so much heartbreak that he's going to have along the way. He bashes in the grandma's head next door, almost without hesitation. Obviously the right decision, but Tommy was even hesitating as he had the gun on her and all of that. He doesn't stop in that moment when they are driving past that family with kids, doesn't stop. He's there to look after his own first. It just gives us those hints at what's to come for his character and how his character will evolve as his character becomes more and more broken. I also think if you watch closely in this episode, they do a great job showing us the different personalities between Sarah and Ellie, which is key to some of the big moments in this entire story. Like, for example, that moment I already mentioned when Joel kills the grandma next door, his daughter is basically horrified. And then later on in the season, when Joel has to kill that security guard by just bashing his face in, Ellie kind of just watches, and you can tell she kind of loves it. She's almost like inspired by it. But it just shows you not only the two different personalities of those characters and how Joel will view those different characters, but it also shows us the two different worlds that they grew up in. Now, I'm one of those people, I've always imagined how everything would go down, like this whole collapse of a society, you know, putting us into an apocalyptic type of a world. And with this whole sequence, how this all goes down and how well it is shot, it's so immersive, especially those moments where we're in the back seat of the car as Joel is driving. There's something about it, you know, of course, it's very similar to the game, but I just feel like it's filmed so perfectly that to me, it feels so immersive. It feels like I'm in the back seat. The camera's not cutting, you know, we're moving from window to window to window like you would be doing if you were in the back seat just trying to observe and just see what the hell is happening while all this craziness is going on. And it feels like you're experiencing this in real time, you know? The characters are thinking on the fly, and that comes across on the screen. It feels like there's a lot of improvising here, and everybody's just leaving everything behind without really even a second to even think about it. And man, right after that plane crashes and Joel starts to carry his daughter, I mean, I already know what's gonna happen. I've seen this moment multiple times, but regardless, going back and watching this moment, it still gives me a pit in my stomach. And of course, that moment that will create this foundation for Joel's character for the rest of his life. I mean, Tommy as well, in a different way, of course, because it's his niece and not his daughter like it is for Joel. But yeah, just that moment when Joel's daughter gets killed. I mean, first it starts with the soldier saying that he's sorry, taking his aim at Joel right there. And then Tommy just blows his head essentially off. And as an audience, you kind of breathe a sigh of relief for a second. Obviously, if you know what's coming, you don't. But if you've never seen it before, you kind of do. But then you think to yourself, oh wait, where's Joel's daughter? And then all of a sudden you hear her breathing. And then your heart, my heart just sinks. And immediately, you know, you can't relax. And to me, just masterful filmmaking and really just perfect storytelling. And obviously such an emotional moment in this show, but really, the only moment I can possibly think of in any video game that I've ever played in my entire life that has genuinely made me tear up. But yeah, just a heartbreaking moment acted so well by everyone involved. And I mean, you are clearly not human if you can keep a dry eye during that moment. You know, sometimes when people say that there's probably NPCs running around amongst us acting like humans, well, just know that if you don't choke up during this moment in the show or the video game, I'm on to you. I know your ass ain't real. Then right after that moment, we cut to 20 years later in Boston. And okay, are we gonna finally be able to have a sigh of relief and relax just for a second after all of that just went down? No, not at all. They immediately introduce us to a new kid and have a new heartbreaking moment in the show, and also introduce us to who Joel is now after all these years and what happened to him. Even the lady next to Joel is like, I can't do this. And Joel is just basically like, you know, whatever, and just tosses this kid into the fire, you know, just continuing the relentlessness of this episode. And then of course in this episode, it's Ellie and Joel meeting for the first time. We get that moment there where Ellie tries to kill Joel with her knife right there. You know, later on in the episode, giving us some hints at their relationship, how it's going to evolve. Ellie, you know, busting his chops there, catching him in moments like the 80s music moment there, which is fun. Just kind of keeping Joel on his toes. But what a great ending to this episode as they've made it outside of the gates. It's nighttime and we're just panning up to see that iconic shot of the two skyscrapers, one of them collapsed. Just letting you know, I mean, this is gonna be a crazy journey from here on out. Now, I do get it if a knock on this episode for you is that a lot of stuff in this episode is basically a copy and paste from the video game. I get that gripe if you do have that gripe with this episode, but I feel like, man, if it's not broken, don't fix it. I just think this is an all-time great video game adaptation, TV show, episode in so many different ways. I mean, I just think it's a perfect example of paying tribute to the greatness of that video game in this type of a format, but also just bringing all of that to life in a real life format as well. But Overall, I mean, episode 1, what a great episode. All right, and coming in at number 1 is an episode that to me just makes me want to be a better person, makes me want to hug my mom a little bit longer the next time I see her, take my dog for an extra walk that day, because you just know someday it'll be the last one, which of course, yes, is episode 3, named Long, Long Time. And to me, just an absolute masterclass on acting by both Nick Offerman and Murray Bartlett in this episode. Also storytelling just in general. And also I feel like an episode that everyone in the TV show and movie business should watch and should learn from. And also one thing they wanted to do with this episode, that co-creator of The Last of Us TV show, Craig Mazin, wanted this episode to be kind of a little bit of a break from just like the fear that all of the previous episodes had. Just that constant like danger around every corner. They wanted to explore more of like hopefulness without that constant fear around you. Now, like I mentioned, as great as that first episode is, that first episode definitely had a large, kind of template that they could follow from the video game to make that episode. Whereas this episode, there's something to be said that this episode is only kind of slightly inspired by the game. It makes this episode even more impressive. Like Neil Druckmann, the co-creator of The Last of Us, even said, this episode is probably the biggest departure this entire season from the video game. Now in the game, we do get to meet Bill, but in the game, his partner Frank is already dead. And one thing we also get in this episode, thanks to Ellie and her million questions that she always has for Joel, is we get to learn a little bit more information about, at least from Joel's perspective, of how all of this spread so quickly throughout the world. And we come to find out that a lot of it got into the food supply that was shipped all over the world, and that helped to just rapidly spread everything. Now, obviously, all of this sucks on so many levels if this were to happen in real life, but damn, it all had to happen on a Friday, didn't it? They couldn't have just given us one last weekend to chill, and then, Monday morning on like a Teams call or something like that, then everything could go down, finally interrupt those annoying meetings you have to go to for work. Nope. Just had to happen on a Friday, probably when you're sitting at home watching some Netflix, cracking your first beer. You're like, well, shit, what's going on next door? Well, it looks like everybody is, turning into a clicker. Great. And yes, about 20 minutes into this episode, we do finally get to meet Bill, and we're introduced to kind of like the more glamorous side of the apocalypse. I'm sure a lot of us who are fans of this kind of stuff think about from time to time, and Bill is definitely living that side of it. I mean, he's able to, first of all, avoid the whole government evacuation thing. He's in this beautiful small town. He has basically access to everything that he needs. He eventually gets the power working. He's got hot water. He's got a shower. He's got all that. He's got a shit ton of guns. He's got all the wine he can drink. He has nothing but peace and quiet now. I mean, he doesn't have to clock in at work anymore. He's just kind of living his life. But then 4 years into the outbreak, 4 years of peace and quiet, of just living his life, everything changed for Bill when Frank shows up. And I remember watching this episode for the first time, and it's kind of funny. I remember being so nervous for Bill. I was rooting for Bill. Obviously, we just met Frank. And there was a part of me that definitely felt like maybe this guy is just conning him. He's going to rob him, or maybe he's going to kill him or something. Especially when Bill sat down on the piano, I was kind of nervous. I was like, oh, damn. I feel like there's like a 50-50 chance right here that Frank is going to try to kill him. Now, obviously, after going back and rewatching this episode, I missed so many hints along the way. Not only that Frank is, probably not a killer, or even a bad guy in this world. I also thought it was pretty damn funny and a great creative choice when they cut from that very, very intimate, important moment for Bill and Frank's characters together to immediately, 3 years later, bursting out of the door, Frank just saying like, fuck you. And it just kind of encapsulates long-term relationships, doesn't it? But I'll tell you, that line, I was never afraid before you showed up. What a line. I mean, it just hits me right there. I mean, I'm a dad of 2 kids, and I 100% agree with that line. I mean, I feel like I truly had no idea what real fear was until both of my kids were born. I mean, just in general, I don't think people really know what fear is until you unconditionally just love something so much that, you know, if anything ever happened to this person or this thing, it's the one thing that could truly break every single piece of you. Even when you get a dog or a cat, I mean, you know what's coming at the end of that journey. Unfortunately, they have a pretty short life expectancy. You know, you're going to get a lot of love along the way, of course, but when they die, I mean, it is not going to be easy. And, you know, with that love, you just really sign up for that heartbreak as well. And like Joel warned them, I mean, one day the Raiders will show up, and yep, they did. By the way, I will say, what the hell was this doomsday, probably former military guy, Bill, doing just firing at these guys in the middle of the road with no cover? I don't know. I felt like that was kind of a little bit of a weird story choice for a guy who I feel like is so prepared for this. And yeah, Bill gets shot, and you're not sure if he's going to survive. Maybe this is going to be the end for him. But then we cut to 2023, and Bill's still alive, but the tables have turned. Now Bill is taking care of Frank. So now at this point, they're both older. Frank now has some sort of an illness, and they purposely left it kind of ambiguous what that illness really is. But some of the people behind the show have said it's either like MS or the early stages of ALS. But really, what an end to both of their characters. I mean, eventually Frank just says, you know what? This is my last day. He has the choice. He can continue living, but his life is just not what it used to be. He's feeling like more of a burden on Bill than ever. You're both getting old. And he's just like, you know what? I want to have a great last day. And this is going to be the last day. And then Bill surprises him and lets him know, this is also going to be my last day. There's nothing else I need to live for. I mean, you were everything. And what an emotional moment. I mean, once again, if you have a dry eye throughout this entire episode, I don't know what to tell you. You are not human. But really, I mean, what a great episode. Just a master class on storytelling. I feel like one of the best episodes I've ever seen in any TV show ever. And I've seen some good shit. Now, I haven't seen every TV show ever made or anything like that. But still, I mean, I just think it is just done so well, acted so well, and just everything is pulled off so well. And also this episode, what's interesting about it is it feels very separate from the main story, but they also do a great job interweaving what happens in this episode with Joel and Ellie's story. But not only that, but it's also a great showcase of the fact of even when the world is harsh like this, you're in a post-apocalyptic world where so many people have died, so much tragedy, there can also still be some peace in this world as well. And also on top of that, I love that final shot of this episode through the window, which is the same shot from the main title screen in the game as well. But there you go, everybody. That is how I rank every episode in season 1 of The Last of Us. Make sure you subscribe as well so you don't miss my ranking of every episode in season 2 of The Last of Us. If you want some more videos from me right now, go ahead and check out one of these videos next to me. All of my social media links will be down below in the description if you want to follow me over there. But again, everybody, thanks so much for watching. Really do appreciate it. My name is Matt, and I will talk to you in the next one.